Welcome to the second episode of the Army Spotlight. Today, we have a major important guest. May I introduce the Chief of General Staff, Krakenwald, to the show. What brought you to Teutonia?
That's actually a pretty interesting story. So I don't know if you know us, if you know him, but Michael GGTV. I don't know if it says anything. He was the air marshal for a brief time. I met him some time ago in a completely different genre, but basically he was the one simply dropping me a DM. Yo, I found this cool group named Teutonia. You should join. Well, and that's it. That's how I joined Teutonia about 2.5 years ago.
Wow, that seems very interesting. I've actually heard about Michael, in my opinion. What does unity mean to you?
It's an interesting question, but I would assume that my definition would alter from what others could say. I think unity would rather mean not to be exact. Like some would maybe define it as being the same, as agreeing to everything, being nearly identical in opinions. I would say it's not that. It is simply being able to work together, even with altering opinions, even if one disagrees with the other, that they can work it out, right? And work out something that everyone benefits from, and so on. So I would generally put that down as a definition for unity. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, for me, true unity is in the heart. And I agree with what you said on that. That's why FP won the RMI Olympics. For those of you who don't know, it was a fun one, but FP always won. But also, what are your current and future plans for the Army?
The main goal, of course, is to keep up the growth, or at least to bring it. I would say we already did bring it back, but it needs to be sustained. Yeah, if you ask about specifics, my personal goal for the army would, of course, be to once again possibly open a third corps in the future, whenever the army is able to actually sustain a third corps, and with that probably another division, which might take time, but I wouldn't say it's unrealistic.
Okay. So, could you define more? Like, what are your hopes for the Third Corps?
There isn't really a specific requirement set or whatever to in order to go ahead with these plans, but again, I would just say roughly having an average in-game activity of about 20 people once again, as we had in winter of last year when I was the GFM, something like that, and being able to really at least 130 or above standard we dropped from very sadly. But yeah, basically the plan with that would be to yeah, open a third core with more diverse units, with more stuff that would encourage competition, which in return, as seen many times in the history of the army, bring us more activity and more growth. So yeah, if that answers your
Okay.
question.
Now, it does. Now, you said you were the former GFM. What were your plans and goals, and what did you accomplish out of your list when you were GFM?
My plans and goals as GFM, of course, didn't just begin or didn't just spawn in there. When I was appointed as GFM, I was the field back then. It was we had a field army, right? Was the field army CO, field marshal already, and I already had some plans there back then. We had a prioritization on opening a second field army, the 12th field army with another two corps, and we did accomplish that. We did hold up that standard for quite some time, even until I was appointed GFM. But at that time, when I was appointed GFM, it turned out to be just not sustainable in the long term. So I made it one of my priorities to simply get rid of this field army system, to simply put together more units, right, in order to up the competition again, to encourage growth, because the army was stagnating. And yeah, we did achieve that reform quite well. We got rid of the field armies. Instead, we got the system we have now, which is still existing, and which worked relatively well until today, with the General Field Marshal, Chief of General Staff, Chief of Army Operations. And yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest goals that I have achieved as GFM. And another of my goals, not only mine but also of my predecessors, I would say, was to make the army really at least 150. And with the Armed Forces Parade in, I think it was November last year, I did achieve that. I think it was the highest amount of people that the army has ever rallied. under my leadership, 150 and 57. And yeah, that's just something I am very proud of today, and I hope to one day even push this army further than we were able to get the army back then, and maybe even really 160, 170, or even 200. Who knows? So yeah.
I personally think you will do that. I know UG rallied, what was it, 207?
Yeah, I saw that. But let's be fair, the UG in comparison to the army is just enormous, right? Especially with them absorbing the Unity League. Just I think it was a year ago already. So yeah, it's not really. I doubt we can compare that right now, but yeah.
Right, but it is an achievable goal and an attainable goal.
Oh yeah, of course. Like I said, it all just depends on the general state of the group. I must say that I doubt we will be able to reach these numbers if, for example, now the RG or the UG should massively expand on armed segments. If they should, for example, just open a trillion armored divisions, a trillion of this, a trillion of that, right? To just get what the army already has to steal competition, if I can put it that way. Happened many times before. I wouldn't say it's unlikely to happen again, but we'll see what comes.
I agree. In my personal opinion, I don't believe the UG is doing that. I know they have UG Marines, but
Well, until just a few weeks ago, they had the exact same amount of armed units than the army had, and right now it's just we have one armed division more than they do.
so what I know this isn't relevant to this segment, but what is your opinion on the War Academy and the new intake process?
War Academy generally, like, no disrespect towards anyone involved in the current War Academy or in any past iterations, but let me put it this way: it's horrible. So, like, generally, the institution, the War Academy itself, right? I've been here for 2.5 years. Never once has it actually functioned properly. Well, okay, once it did when it de facto not existed, right? When it wasn't there, when we had officer academies put to the sub branches, and only one central NCO course, right? That was the only time that I can recall where the officer and NCO selection process and so on has actually functioned efficiently and effectively. And any other time, it was just, you have a war academy reform. Someone has an issue. Oh, we reform it again. Yes, this time this will be the final reform. Oh, then they reform it again a few months later, and again, and again, and again, and again. That's the process of the War Academy. It has never really functioned without flaws at all, because in the current state of the War Academy, all sub branches have to agree, right? They have to come together to find a system that works for all of them. That wasn't the case when we had officer academies for all the sub branches, right? I still don't really know what they've planned for this reform. Of course, I would say I'm open-minded with that. If they manage to come up with a feasible solution that actually that makes sense and that is sustainable, then sure. But I must admit I doubt it. So yeah.
Right. I know I can speak from experience. Their process is lucrative, but also not really lucrative. Like lucrative in the
Yeah.
way of how they're doing things. Like they got rid of a few of the rules. You know, they rallied yesterday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, I believe, and
Mhm.
they had 57 members show up there,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
And like I think the main issue with the War Academy is that the same people are being put in charge of these reforms all the time instead of actually getting people in with new opinions on things, or even people that actually speak from experience with those institutions from other perspectives, not just from within the War Academy. But yeah, that's something else again.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, what are your past and current experiences within the realm?
Yeah, so when I joined, my first actual unit I joined was the 33rd RG Volunteer Division, Napoleon or whatever it was called, right? I worked my way up there to the second lowest NCO in mid-August, like directly after the summer reforms of the army. If any of you recall, when the army was completely fucked basically, and everything was reformed and repositioned, only one core, ACFMH and FGG. I've decided to join the army, and I've been in the army since then for about 2 years now. I joined as a junior sergeant. I was demoted by one rank because all transfer rules, right? So worked my way up there in the Armored Recon Battalion Field Marshal's Hall. The only unit I've ever really been in the army. I've worked my way up there to the position of Regiment EXO. From there, I was later appointed the executive of the Armored Division Field Marshal's Hall. Then, for a brief time, as I was the commanding general of the ADFM8. Then, like, it really went down pretty fast. I was appointed the executive of the Armored Corps Field Marshal Saul. After that, I think, yeah, I would even say I was one, if not the longest serving executive of the Armored Corps Field Marshal Saul. Uh, then a few months into that, I was appointed the commanding general of the Armored Corps Field Marshal's Home after the previous commander was swapped out several times. When Magnus became the Rams Marshal and David Hermanhard moved on to become the General Field Marshal, he appointed me as his XO, as the Field Marshal, and basically the Field Army Commander back then. And yeah, after that, when he was moved up to become the next Rams Marshal, I was appointed General Field Marshal. I think I was also the second longest serving GFM with about 9 months until I was relieved of my duties in, I think it was actually on the 2 year anniversary, basically, of me being in Teutonia, July of this year. I think it was the 8th of July this year when I was relieved of my duties, like I said. The following 7 months, I was not really involved with anything because stuff happened that I don't want to go really into detail with. I was REMS blacklisted for about 2 weeks for being in contact with someone who was REMS blacklisted, who I didn't know was REMS blacklisted. Different story. After that, I was command blacklisted for the 7 months, like mentioned, where I still basically worked my ass off in the ruler labor service as the head of the tank department and in the Rams Ministry of Culture. Until very recently, when Supreme Command decided that the army needs new command, when I was appointed Field Marshal again.
Okay, so can you tell me or tell the other members here what plans the Army has in terms of development?
What exactly in terms of like development, or generally how the army will, how we think it will evolve?
Both.
Yeah, so again, I think the very common goal right now of all command members is to simply get those numbers up. Our goal was nearly reached at the last rally, the goal set by the Rams Chancellor to rally 110. We rallied 108 and still rallied the most out of all branches. And again, like, our common goal is to always remain and be the branch with the highest rally turnouts. And our goal is, of course, to up those goals always. Again, like, our next goal would be to rally 130, which is realistic, but we just need people to actually do their jobs and put in more effort, right? And yeah, that will of course increase over time until we will be able to actually open another core again. I think that is also the goal of Armed Forces Command and Army Command. The question with that is just on how this new core would look like, which is not fully answered yet. And yeah, speaking of development in terms of like assets and game stuff, I have been working on new uniforms for the entirety of the army over the last weeks. General staff already has access to them. Those would be the close collar uniforms. That's the thing that we're all waiting the most for. But currently, there's still some struggles with the RQM about how certain details on those uniforms should look like. So it might still take some time, and yeah.
So, in terms of Army awards, are there going to be any new awards slash ribbons coming out?
I doubt it. Like, I haven't spoken with anyone. Like, it wasn't really a topic brought up by anyone yet. Back then, I tried to get some new medals for the army and for the armed forces. This it was just back then, like, yeah, the former Rams Marshal had the same idea at the same time as I did. So the armed forces honor cross was a result of that. Um, but yeah, no, there's not really any plans to get any new medals by what I'm aware of. There might be plans by Armed Forces Command, but I have no idea. So,
I
yeah.
mean, as a sub branch command, you can always request them.
Yeah, but the question is if they will be granted anyway. I tried getting new awards several times, for example, for the Russian volunteers, right? To get some sort of medal for them, as the RG Volunteer Corps also had something similar. Most of the time, those requests just get pushed aside. Like, most of the time, it's just not worth putting in the effort to request something that will probably be denied in the end either way. So yeah.
Okay. I understand what you mean. What are your tips to avoid burnout within the realm?
Well, it sounds simple. I mean, it kind of is when you think about it, but simply to set oneself a goal, you know, that's how I kept myself active for most of the time. To just have in mind, like, I want this, I want this army or this core back then when I led ACFMH to really this amount of number to have this like set specific goals, right? That I can really work towards. And most of the time with that, you also get awards, of course, which boost one's morale even further. But yeah, simply setting a goal you can really walk towards to, at least kept me most of the time from going inactive or from simply losing interest, because there was always something in my mind, always something I could do. So yeah.
Okay. Well, if no one has any other questions, comments, or concerns, I will be ending the Army Spotlight. It was an honor to have you on this episode.
Thank Yeah, I also like being here. Was very interesting. Yeah, thanks. Thanks.